January 4th, 2018. Good morning, everybody. What's up? Brand new year, right? So, I've been talking about Christmases, right? And past couple episodes. And I kind of got all the way through to 1997. But I kind of forgot about something that was like a tradition for me. I had started back in high school. And that was during Christmas break. I started my freshman year. And during Christmas break, I would try to draw something really difficult. Basically, I had nothing else to do. during those 2 or 3 weeks, it was 2 weeks off, I had nothing else to do. Wasn't going anywhere most of the time, so aside from playing some video games, I was really getting into my art at the time, and Image Comics had launched, and Death of Superman was, a big deal. So, my freshman year, I had put together a big collage, you'd call it, big piece of illustration board. It was like 18 by 24. And then I went and digged up all my favorite comics and any characters that were drawn by my favorite artist. I would just start redrawing. So I think the first one was a giant. It was a lot of like Jim Lee, McFarlane, Jeff Smith. I think I had an Akira pose on there. I don't have any pictures of this stuff. I'd always give them away to friends when I got done, but I would spend every day for about 2 weeks working on something really, really difficult. And I remember when I took it to school to show my art teacher. There was you get the kids who go, you had to look at that. You had to look at drawings, right? To do that. And this is like the beginning of my personality, right? I remember just looking at him like, it wasn't one kid. It was pretty repetitively. And after a while, I was just like, yeah, but here's a pencil. You try it. I'm like fucking 13, man. Like, like I'm 13. Am I really expected to be Jim Lee at 13? I can't really be Jim Lee now, right? So, like, chill, And that was my freshman year. That was 1992. There were some video game characters in there. I remember that threw people off. Sonic was in there, and Street Fighters. I drew Ken. And I just remember friends going, Sonic and Batman, like, that's just so weird, Video games can't team up with comic books. I'm certain all these people now are going to Comic-Con and complaining that I'm not going to Comic-Con. It's funny how geekdom has changed in 30 years, right? In 1993, I was really into Alphonse Mucha, who's sort of the father of the Art Nouveau movement, and Joe Quesada, the comic book artist who eventually was editor-in-chief at Marvel for a while, and I think now he's chief creative officer or some shit. He had been drawing a book called Ninjak, and he was taking a lot of Mucha's backgrounds and redrawing them. and then incorporating Ninjak. There was a fold-out poster in Wizard Comics of Ninjak jumping off his motorcycle, and then there's this like flat, super detailed Muka background, and that pairing of that Art Nouveau with the comic book stuff just blew me away. So in 1993, I just was working on Muka stuff, but my art class, we had to have a stippling project. So a stippling is where you use dots. So I did an 18 by 24 Alphonse Muka recreation in dots. Which, I gotta tell you, it's a lot of dots. Like, even to this day, I'm just thinking back. I could... There's a lot of dots, man. Started from the top left and worked my way down. I remember my friends just looking at it going like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, it's a lot of the same commentary I get these days on some of the pieces, which I'll get to in a minute. And in 1994, I did a giant Youngblood versus Crypt piece. So I had gone to Comic-Con that year, and Moon Knight, I think, kind of was getting some steam. It was kind of on fire with Stephen Platt, and so there was a whole conversation I'd heard at a panel at Comic-Con about taking something that isn't working and trying to like make it work. So Moonlight wasn't selling. You put on, an artist or whatever. It's got some crazy style. You could pump up the book, right? So I inherently, like, at a core level, I really liked Rob Liefeld's characters in books. Not because they were deep characters, but they were action figures. Like his Youngblood stuff with Crypt and Chapel, it's right out of G.I. Joe and Masters of the Universe. Like, it was a comic book. If that had been a toy line that just debuted on KB with a cartoon, you'd be like, oh, we'd have a completely different, remembrance of it. So for me, that's the stance I took. So I wanted to have all these Youngblood characters fighting Crypt because he's a cool character, got a cool name, and I thought it would be dope. It was probably Chapel that year. I think I did Chapel that year, and then I did Crypt the following summer. I'm a little iffy on that, folks. If Crypt wasn't out by December of 1994, then it was Chapel. I did it twice because I had nothing else to do the next summer. But yeah, that's what I did. And that was the first time I had made all those poses up. So yeah. But I mean, I had a gazillion comics sitting around me, so I'm working out poses from comics, but I wasn't redrawing someone's specific pose or art. So I remember just not understanding two things. One, hair, and two, how to get like surface texture. Like, for some reason, it didn't really dawn on me how shapes you build items three-dimensionally on characters, including cross-hatching or rendering or anything else. And so it was one of those things where I was like, I'm not good at this cross-hatching thing. So I started drawing everything with just lines, like outlines. I think Todd Nuck's Newman came out a little after that, and then I was like, I kind of got like his style art, which was more constructional, a little more chunky, less reliant on cross-hatching ink techniques, which I mean, now that I look at it, was just a way to cover up a tremendous amount of page. You know, the reason why it didn't make a lot of sense is because at the time it wasn't making it was just there to hide mistakes. A lot of times, but that's what I did. 94 giant young blood piece, and then I was on my crutches in 95. Oh, this one I'm having a hard time remembering. Oh yeah. So I did if you guys remember, I did this video on my YouTube channel about a little over a year ago. Rob's old art. So if you go check out that video, I go through a box of all my old art that I still have around. And one of them was this little chibi Iron Man I called Iron Manga. Because I had watched an anime called Dragon Half, and they would turn into little cartoon versions of themselves randomly throughout the episode. And I thought that was amazing. I didn't know what a chibi was. And it wasn't even a word we were using. So I had a little cute little Iron Man called Iron Manga. And I only picked Iron Man because his man in it, and it's manga. And I didn't have to draw hair, right? And no one liked Iron Man in 1995. No one gave a shit. So I would draw this little Iron Man. So that Christmas, I did a giant two 18 by 24s taped together, a card. Some kid was a friend of our art teacher had cancer or something. So like the first and last time I did something for charity. So I spent the entire Christmas break drawing all these superheroes as chibis, basically. Big feet, tiny, big heads, small bodies. The only thing was every now and then I'd give the guys a little package. Because girls in my school were like, oh, he's got nuts. You know, I don't, not on this kid's piece, but on the separate piece, you know. I think Robin had a little bit of a package. But that's it. I think there was like 20-something characters on that, if I remember right. And then I got it all drawn on break. Took me forever because I did it all from scratch. No reference or anything other than character reference. So from my freshman year, where I had to just redraw, to my senior year, where I was creating my own illustrations from scratch. Still not drawn very well, but at least I was making progress in my eye, I guess, some kind of progress. But it took me like all break to draw it because I moved incredibly slow. And plus, I think I was playing Chrono Trigger at the time. I think I might have been playing Chrono Trigger. I was playing something on my Super Nintendo. Might have been Breath of Fire 2. Anyhow, I colored the whole thing in colored pencil. I remember that. But that was like after break, so I'd take it to this art class and I'd spend another couple weeks just coloring it in art class. Taking my sweet ass time. So what did that do? That started a tradition of, at the end of the year, of always doing some crazy piece, which, if you've been following my art for any reasonable amount of time, you'll see that for some reason I still end up doing that. To this, I just did it. You know, just did that stupid Dragon Ball piece. You know, the last year wasn't so bad. I mean, it was like, oh no, it was the Grand Theft Auto piece, but I had colored that twice, so it wasn't super complicated, but I colored it twice, so that was a pain in the ass. And the Star Wars piece before that, and yeah, it goes on and on. So, let's see here. Where are we at? 14 minutes. So 1997 was where I left off. That was my last Christmas getting to be a kid, basically. And I kind of could feel it. I'd already bought this book, The Power of Myth, which was a conversation between Bill Moyers and Joseph Campbell. And I knew that I had to move on with my life. My art was not getting good. I felt in many ways my art was getting worse. And I was working 80 to 100 hours a week for my father and getting paid every 3 or 4 months. So, I don't know. It was a weird time in my life. But the year before, I'd worked at this toy store called Playco. And for a while, since they were a hobby store that you can make airplanes and model cars or RC cars, they had a bunch of balsa wood. And every bit of their balsa wood had been picked up by a movie studio. These guys would come down, buy everything we had. Eventually, we put them in touch with our main distributor so they could get as much balsa wood as they needed. Turns out it was for a movie called Titanic. That's how I learned about Titanic. And they were working down in Rosarito in Mexico, and Jim Cameron was directing it, and I knew Jim Cameron from Terminator and The Abyss, which The Abyss was at the time my favorite, and I loved True Lies and Aliens 2, and I was like, oh my god, he's making a movie about a ship that sinks? But hey, and they were explaining to me that they had rebuilt the entire ship and they could raise it up in the air, and I was like, get the fuck out of here. So one of the guys that was on set when the movie finally came out gave me a bunch of photos that he had taken on set of all the extras and of the ship lying in the tank of water. I don't really think those photos are. I should probably put them on the net at some point. Give them credit and whatnot, and put those on the net, because I don't think those photos are available anywhere. And that movie came out, and it was for a good year. I mean, anytime someone brought up Titanic, it was like, that fucking movie's gonna sink. Like, that's all it was. And I've told this story about when I was at the pre-screening of Batman and Robin about a month before it came out. The audience, whatever, we got to rate it. I was making fun of it at the end, and I pointed to this giant stand. There's just a big metal cardboard block, and it said Titanic in metal. I was like, that fucking movie is gonna kick your ass. Like, ridiculous. And this movie came out and kicked ass. Like, look, man, I know it's hard. The internet creates this giant group think, mass conscious, like, thing. And for you younger people out there, I don't know if you're able to think for yourselves or have an opinion that isn't influenced in some way. Look, I'm on the internet, right? So if I influence your opinion, here we are. I would just say this, right? Like, I've always just had my own opinions. And they're based off, like, observation, personal taste, and they're subject to change. Regardless of what you think of a movie, I've always been to the production, how a movie was made. Return of the Jedi was not my favorite film when I was a kid. I didn't like a lot of it. But I could appreciate and get really into how the fuck they made those speeder bikes happen, and all the models had to get built in the green screen, and like everything, the giant spaceship battles, like. And as someone that wants to make things for a living, like, I would memorize all the names of the people working on production, and I wanted to find everything else about it, and I'd get Cinefex magazines. And so when something that was incredibly difficult to make comes out and is financially successful, I mean, if you can't cheer for that, then this is not the place. We are not of kindred spirit, because it's fucking hard to make shit, man. And that movie was incredibly difficult to make. I guess people just don't, they've never shown the making of, for a lot of reasons. You know, I think, I don't even want to get into it, but there was just a lot of, it was an incredibly difficult thing to do. They rebuilt that ship and they could raise it in the air, man. You know? And every time they'd raise it and all the interior stuff would go flying around everywhere, they would have to lower the ship, put everything back in place, and do it again. You know, and I just defy anyone who goes, that fucking movie sucked. Like, just fucking get past your own whatever on any film. And if you're going to be an artist and you're going to make stuff, you gotta get past that, because you're going to be tasked with working on projects that aren't popular, and you're going to need to do your best fucking job. And if you can't do that, then I swear you will never, ever fucking make it. You know? You cannot walk into a production room and talk shit about a film and not know if maybe 3 of those cats actually worked on that production. You know, and so like Titanic was one of the first time where I was just blown away. I saw it 7 times in the theaters, and you know, people are like, "What, you in love with Jack?" I'm like, "No, look at how fucking hard this movie. God damn, they made this." You know, like, and you could feel the film. It had an emotional core. I mean, it didn't make so much money because, you know, it sucked. I mean, I just think that anytime something's super successful, the immediate backlash is going to happen because people are like, "Well, it shouldn't have been. You know, it's overrated." Like, I don't give a fuck what anyone thinks if they think that's overrated. You know, I'm overrated, man. Everyone's overrated. Hey, man, you know, you parents you love so much, one day they're gonna die, and no one's gonna fucking care after a while. What, were they overrated? No, they meant a lot to you, which means they're not overrated. So just fucking kids, man. People my own age, whatever. Movie changed my life. I saw that movie and broke up with my girlfriend and eventually quit my job. Moved all my stuff out of California and joined the Army. And that is where I'm going to leave this, because that takes me to how I spent my Christmas in 1998. Basic training. It is January 4th, 2018, and it is time to get to work.